Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dieter's School of Martial Science. So, today I want to talk to you guys about uh, field work. Okay, Sere and uh, some traditional slash unconventional weapons. Now, pardon me, I'm putting fresh chowing. For our school, the way field work is defined is any type of movement over land, mountain, sea, and the best ways to stay camouflaged or to minimize your visibility. Um, you know, that's what we mean by field work. We're also going to learn about, build on first aid and, some of our, movement and navigation skills. That's, kind of the entry level, but that's what we mean by field work. Is basically we're focusing mostly on movement. Now, the second term I threw out there today was Sere. Sere is a military term. It means survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. Um, Now, this program was originally designed to help, soldiers, Marines, airmen, sailors, um, to avoid capture by the enemy should they basically be surrounded, have to retreat, regroup, any of the above. Um, the way that I teach this program is a little bit more of a scaled down approach. I'm going to run you through the basics, but I focus more on urban seer because most of my students aren't going to be out in the backwoods somewhere. Okay, most of my students live in a city. So I focus more on that. Um, this is important for any martial artist to know because in this day and age, if you have to use force to defend your life or your property, odds are that they're going to try to make you hang for it. They're going to try to put you in jail. And the best way to avoid being put in jail for self defense is to evade capture by local law enforcement officers so that you have time to, consult an attorney and get them to represent you. So I teach my students immediately after you use force, egress the area. In a city, the response to uh, a violent call, a violent crime, is anywhere between on the low end 3 minutes and the high end an hour and a half. Really depends on your city, the time of day, rush hour, closest officer, that particular agency's policies. Some won't require allow a single officer to go on scene. They have to roll with the double. That might mean he has to wait for another car to be available. So you have a minimum window of 3 minutes, a maximum window of an hour and a half. So, how do we egress the area, you know, in the event of we only having 3 minutes? Well, that means that the minute you throw your first punch, you need to have a clock running in your head 30 seconds. That clock, when it hits 30 seconds, if you haven't won the fight, disengage and then start heading due west. Then head south. and try to get within get by the basically driving at 35 miles an hour, right? You can go 1 mile in just under a minute, okay? About 20, 45, 55 seconds, give or take. You need at least 3 miles heading west. Here's why. Police officers understand a principle that an animal under flight, particularly of the human species, is always going to head towards magnetic north. Inside of your ears is fluid. This fluid acts as a compass, believe it or not. And under duress, when your conscious mind leaves the building and you're operating on just instinct, it takes over and it starts heading you north, towards magnetic north. So when they go to set up a cordon around the area, they're going to set up within a quarter of a mile first, then run that out from there. And they're going to start north, head east, head west, south, then west, because a human under flight will generally run north, east, south, west. So the key there is if you want to get a head start, immediately track west. Ignore that instinct. Head due west. Try to get at least 3 miles. If you got 3 miles, you're outside of the cordon. Now you can, start looking for your shelter. Okay? When you're looking for shelter, you're looking for three things. You want something that's in an area that's preferably industrial. Okay? In an industrial area, they're less likely to have foot traffic that could spot you. They're less likely to have cameras except for around buildings. And they're not likely to notice a power outage because it's an industrial area. They'll assume that somebody just put something too big into the outlet. This assumption allows you to negate the advantage of cameras. Most places do not have their security cameras on a generator. That means that if you cut power to said building, there's no cameras. Your goal at that point is to look for an abandoned warehouse, something that's loud, that's got plenty of space to maneuver. Okay? At that point in time, you're going to black out the power to the area. The easiest way to do that is to take some 510 paracord, put a rope, put a ball or a weight at one end. If you don't know how to tie a monkey's fist, throw it up over the power line, pull the wire down, make sure you're clear of the arc down. That'll black out the area for about a quarter of a mile in any given direction, taking any cameras offline. Also, most buildings that have electronic locks are automatically set to open up if there's a power outage to aid first responders and people leaving the building. So that means you have less locks to bypass. Your next objective is to gather as much body heat containing material as you can. You want metal. You want aluminum foil. One of the things they'll do if they're looking for somebody is they'll scramble a chopper with a body heat sensor in it. And finding yourself a nice abandoned warehouse to hide out in doesn't do you a lick of good if they can see your thermal signature. Now, you need to wait about 4.5 days. If they can't find you in 4.5 days, they assume you fled the state. So as a result, they withdraw their officers and their searches, and everything goes back to normal. And that point is when you go and you get, online. You want to borrow a phone from your local business, okay? And start calling lawyers out the phone book. Three things to remember when you're egressing an area. Take the battery, the SIM card out of your cell phone. Throw those in separate directions. Cell phones can be tracked. If you need to, you can always buy a new battery for $5-10 and get a new SIM card from your carrier. Keep the empty phone on you. Um, don't use credit cards or debit cards, anything else. If you have to, get a cash dump from somewhere. Go to an ATM, whatever. Next but not least, avoid using your vehicle. Cars don't get reported stolen for anywhere between an hour and 45 minutes after they've been boosted. My advice to you would be boost somebody's car out of a Walmart. That way, by the time they come out of the store, you've already holed up in your hide. Okay? Park that somewhere, in the vicinity and then leave it. Once you get to that 3 mile radius, leave that vehicle somewhere and go on foot. Remember, they can later on recognize your stride from cameras. Take a pebble, it's old school Cold War, put it in your boot or your shoe or whatever, alters your gait. Remember that they can use things like ear matching to make sure that that's you on candid camera. So cover them ears up. Okay. Remember, they can use things like jewelry. So if you're wearing any, ditch it or cover it up. Last but not least, they'll use the distance between this bone and this elbow, which is different even on identical twins. Okay? And the ball of your wrist to your elbow to match your arm to something they see on camera. So wear something that's loose fitting and covers that area. Okay? When you're going ghost, remember another thing, they can match your jawline to get most of the points they need to do facial match. So, have yourself some chewing tobacco or some pieces of paper. Widen out that jawline, flare them cheeks, okay? When you're walking, drop your chin so that your lips are down and your jaw is fully elongated. This messes with facial recognition software. Um, uh, if you can, pick a shoe that's one size too big and or one size too small. This allows your tread to not be matched. Okay, your footprints, if you will. Wear something that is, subdued colors. The best color to be unseen at night is OD green or dark navy-ish blue. Okay, black actually will silhouette you because it shows as darker than the surrounding darkness around it. Avoid black at all costs. If you're gonna wear black, cover it up with something that's different colors like gray or blue or navy blue or green. That way it breaks up your silhouette. Nature abhors a straight line. So, nothing that's natural is gonna be in a straight line. So remember to contour, contour, contour. Um, that's what camouflage is, those weird shapes and patterns and all of that. At nighttime, peripheral vision is always better than your straight ahead. Learn to use the corner of your eyes. There's going to be an instinct for you to rush. That is stupid. At night, speed attracts sight, it attracts the eye. So the best thing you can do is move at a snail's pace. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast, fast is deadly. Okay. Um, The human eye doesn't see things that are not too far above ground level. Back when I was going to sniper school, it was 6 inches was the rule. Anything that's six inches above the ground, it is going to be next to impossible to see at night. Um, so go low. Remember, the shadows are your friends. Use the light and the cloud cover to your advantage. Move shadow to shadow. Avoid the lit spots. Okay? You see how there's a light behind me? Avoid that. Always have the light in front of you. Okay? That way somebody looking through the light can't, looking at in that direction can't see you. Field work. Some of what I've just discussed comes under field work. Okay? When you're moving on hard ground, the ball of your foot will make less noise than the whole thing. So learn to walk or jog on the balls of your feet. When you're moving over soft terrain like gravel or whatnot, the best thing you can do is bring your whole foot up and bring it down evenly and lightly. High step it, if you will. This allows you to move with minimal noise. When you're moving over sand and, fine dirt, you want to work heel to toe. That allows you to displace the least amount of loose sand or dirt, and it allows you to, distribute your weight in a manner that's quiet. When you're moving over uncertain terrain, you want to start with the ball of your foot and work towards the heel. The heel is the sturdiest part of your foot. It's nature's brake. If you're gonna slide out, 9 times out of 10, you'll slide out off of your toes, not off of your heels, unless your body weight's off. So when you're moving over ice or snow or something that could be slippery like water, you always want to put the ball of your foot down and then roll the heel down. Make sure your foot is secure and firm before you transition your next step. Um, uh, Now, another thing to remember, uh, going back to our Sere, some of your survival skills I talk about in a later date. There's two things you should always have on you unless it's prohibited by law, like you're going into a court building or something. That would be a sharp blade, and then some paracord, and a bit of duct tape. You can take duct tape and roll it over itself so that it'll last for several weeks. Make yourself a small bundle. Between that, you can do most things you're going to need to do. You can use snares to catch. You can make snares to catch small game. Okay. You can make trip lines to cover your area. You can tie up a security guard or a citizen who comes across you. You can use the paracord as a tourniquet by putting it around the wound or just above the wound, and then using your knife to twist to get that tension. Your duct tape can be used as a bandage to stop bleeding. It can also be used as a form of a clotting agent by sticking it into a wound. Um, I usually carry a small, pill bottle with baking soda because baking soda is a natural clotting agent and it's antiseptic. Um, Now let's get back to some of our survival skills. That's why I bring up these other things. Making a bow and arrow is extremely easy. Okay, it is not as hard as people make it out to be. You cut a bit of green wood and you notch one end with your knife, the other end with your knife. You literally are going to take your paracord, tie a loop on one end. You're going to bend that green piece of tree branch and tie another loop to that end. Then you're going to shave the bark and the wood to make a natural hand rest. Then you're going to put it over fire and let the smoke cure the outside of the wood. That's all it takes. Simple old fashioned longbow, effective to about 75 feet for an untrained archer. Um, one of the reasons I teach this skill, if you need food, a bow might be a good way to go. Um, it's easily accessible and it won't give away your position like a rifle or a shotgun. I talk about using pike spears. Okay, a pike is just what it sounds like. Okay, it is literally, um, it can be even just a sharpened stake. That is a pike. Okay, it's a thrusting, piercing, stabbing weapon. A spear is something that has a blade attached to it of some type. I teach my students how to make blades out of flint. Okay, because almost always you can find soft stone, either shale or flint or sandstone, that can be easily shaped into a spearhead or an arrowhead. Axe, self sufficient. Everybody can envision what an axe is. Absolutely deadly weapon for close combat. It's also useful for building a structure or digging yourself a hole in the ground to use as a latrine. The same is true of a hammer. It's also a very efficient close combat weapon that can also be used for survival purposes. hmm Um, you know, uh, these are pretty much the main things that you can basically build yourself. In the event that you need something to survive for a few days, weeks, you can easily take a big enough piece of stone and make an axe or a hammer. Um, you can easily make a spear or a pike. There's more advanced types of bows that you can make if you have time. By using pine resin, you can cut a piece of wood in a recurved shape. Cut another piece of wood from that same piece of wood, but cut it parallel. It's opposing. You carve one end in and carve the other one out. Okay. Then you take pine resin and layer that on the one side of the wood. Take the other to it. Okay. This gives you, two pieces of wood that are putting tension in different ways. One's pulling this way, and the other's pulling this way. Then you take any type of material you have on hand, leather, shirt, even your paracord, doesn't really matter. You're going to wrap that around and around and around and around, create a tight binding. Fun fact, if you soak a rope and you use it to bind something or tie a knot. When the rope dries, it'll be so tight that the only way to get it out of there is to cut it. Paracord is like any other rope in this regard. Um, you're going to repeat that process on another section of wood. Then you're going to drill a tiny hole in each end and affix that to another piece of wood that you've cut flat and made an L so that it looks like this. Now, after you have done that, you're going to heat that bow up so everything kind of fuses together. Hold it above the fire. Then all you got to do is string it. That's how you make a recurve bow. That's simple. It's just two cut different pieces of wood cut in opposing directions, glued together, and then wrapped in some sort of binding. Arrows are a little trickier. Simply put, an easy way to measure the length of an arrow you're going to need is hold a piece of stick up to your bow that you've made yourself. Okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to look for something that goes 3/4 of that length. Okay? If that twig you're holding up is 3/4 of a length, you're going to notch one end. On the end that you notch, you're going to put one of your fletchings straight up. That's your wind vane that lets you know where you'll be making a shape that lets you know that the arrow is notched correctly because it'll be straight out. You're going to put another one at 45 degrees. From that, and another fletching at 45 degrees from that. That is how you properly fletch an arrow. Now, the reason why you want it to be 3/4 the length of your bow, when you're drawing the bow back and you're pulling with those muscles from your back, okay, that arrow needs to be a little bit more than half the length of your bow. So that way, a good 4-6 inches is sticking out past your thumb of your bow hand. Does that make sense? Now, two ways to shoot a bow. The first way is what's known as a cross knock, where imagine this is my bow, okay, and I cross the arrow over my index finger's knuckle and draw like that. This allows you a little bit more accuracy at a distance, gives you a little more range, but it's also slow to knock an arrow that way. The other way to knock an arrow is going just over the thumb of your bow hand, otherwise known as a Saracen draw, and pulling that arrow straight back and then allowing it to release off the thumb. It doesn't give you the same accuracy at a distance, but it allows you to draw and knock an arrow quicker. Because basically, you're slamming, if this is your arrow, this is your bow, you're dropping the arrow on top and pulling it back to your ear and letting it fly. Versus pushing an arrow through, knocking it, and then pulling it back and letting it fly. Try them both. Find out what's more comfortable for you. Key thing to remember, these weapons are primitive, okay? But there's 3 advantages to them. 1, you can make them out of just about any material, out of any place, at about any time. 2, Um, because they're easy to make, you don't need to be as careful about maintenance. If it breaks, you can just make a new one. And last, each and every one of these weapons is silent, which means that if you're using it and you're being hunted, then it is less likely that the people hunting you will be able to fix on your location. Anyway, that's about it for this. Our next, class is going to be lesson 11 in DSMS, and that's dynamic entry, mountaineering, and we're going to stress a lot of safety techniques for these two things because they're extremely dangerous. I want to wish a happy Veterans Day to everybody tomorrow. Um, I know sometimes for us veterans it can be a little bit of a sad day because we're thinking about the brothers that aren't there, that made the ultimate sacrifice and showed the ultimate love from America and people that live in it. I want you to know that if any of y'all need to talk, feel free to reach out to me anytime. Uh, my phone number is 216-816-4148, and my email is warriortemplephoenix@gmail.com. Anyway, stay safe out there. Be blessed and constant vigilance.